two ways. One, as we talked about before, was control. Figure out what you have control over and what you don't have control over, and don't sweat what you don't have control over. And this is also in relationships too, Emily. You're not going to be able to change people.
Yeah,
So
hard enough to change myself.
yeah, exactly. So figure out what you can control. And I mean, it's like hitting your head against the wall, right? And the second thing is practicing and living in gratitude.
This is Emily Harmon, host of the Onward Podcast, and I want to give a heads up to my Onward Podcast listeners. Number one, I appreciate you. Thank you very much for listening to the Onward Podcast. And number two, I wanted to let you know that starting in January of 2022, I started to call my live show Onward Live, and I changed the theme. It's about creating a life you love living now. I'm going to publish the Onward Live episodes under the Onward Podcast brand. So this is part of the transition. This episode was recorded back in the fall of 2021. And I have a few more episodes like this to publish. They were recorded live as the Onward Podcast. Pretty soon, though, we will transition to all Onward Live episodes being broadcast under the Onward Podcast brand. No worries, I'm still going to bring you awesome guests and awesome interviews. Conducting these interviews is one of my most favorite things to do. I learn from every single guest, and I hope you do too. Let's cut to the interview. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the live version of the Onward Podcast. Well, we're going to get started. So I didn't get to introduce myself. I'll just say my name is Emily Harmon. I worked for the Department of the Navy for about 34 years, 38 years when you count college. And I finally woke up and said, this is, what do I want to do? I want to host a podcast. I want to feel my feelings again. I want to have in-depth conversations with people. I want to be a coach. I want to do what I want to do and create a life I love living. Not that I didn't love working for the Navy, but it was time for a change. And I think a lot of people kind of have been feeling that way through COVID and things like that. So welcome, Lori Baker-Schena. I appreciate that you are here tonight.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, and you are an executive leadership coach, and you're a professional speaker. And I told you that the Onward Podcast is all about facing adversity, moving forward, and discovering ourselves along the way. And you want to talk about discovering joy and having joy. It is just showing me that they're having trouble on LinkedIn again, but having joy through adversity. And I'm just wondering, what kind of adversity have you been through that makes you able to be an expert on that?
Well, that's a great question. I think, first of all of us face adversity in our lives. I don't think we're very well prepared for it when we're children, especially, I hate to say it, the next generation, the younger people, because we're so protected as children that we don't realize that bad things will happen to us. And so, but at the end of the day, everyone has challenges. And my first challenge came when I was 12 and my mother died of ovarian cancer.
Oh my gosh.
And that really set a course for me of realizing that it was tragic, but you have to continue figuring out how to live. And, I had a lot of therapy and that was very, very helpful. I also had two siblings who were disabled, older siblings. I had one with cerebral palsy and one was bipolar. So I kind of grew up in a very challenging environment, and my father was amazing, I was very fortunate to have a great dad. But anyway, so that was my first shot at adversity. And then of course you have the career adversity and all the things that kind of hit you back and forth. But my big ones were my sister ended up passing away from breast cancer when she was 54. And my brother ended up dying from pneumonia when he was 56. So, weirdly enough, when I was 55, I was diagnosed with my first cancer, which was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And that was something that came out of left field because there's nothing hereditary about it. And then this past March, I was just diagnosed with breast cancer. And so I've been through treatment, which is why my hair is so short, because I just finished chemotherapy and it's growing back and I'm very excited.
Yes.
But so my adversity has been a lot of health issues. But a lot of us have health issues, but a lot of us have, adversity in other areas, relationships, jobs, moving, all sorts of things. So even though mine is a health-centered adversity, we all have very challenges in our life that we have to deal with every day. And my thought is that we have to know that they're going to happen and that cards are going to be dealt to us, whether we want them or not. But number two, how to continue finding joy despite the adversity. Because it's so easy to kind of give up and say, oh, life's too hard. I'm so sick, this and that. But at the end of the day, life's about finding joy. So how do you do that in the midst of so much challenge? And so that's where I'm coming from, and how I have found that you can find joy, even though you have, tremendous challenges.
When did you discover that?
I think I discovered that probably in my 40s. And I realized, I think women especially really come into their own in their 40s. And I really realized that you wake up every morning and you have two choices. You either can say to yourself, I'm going to have a miserable day, or I'm going to have a great day. It's a choice that you make. And so making that choice to be happy and joyful really sets the tone for the rest of your life. So I think I discovered that in my 40s. And then then it was tested in my 50s when I got my 55, when I got my first diagnosis of cancer, because, it was a crazy cancer. I had no idea, what was going on. And now the breast cancer, it's almost like I've been through it. Right. But
Yeah.
I think in the 40s, my 40s is where I really realized that no matter what, you got to find joy.
How do you just decide, I'm going to find joy today? I'm going to be joyful.
Because I like being happy. Being happy feels so good. And I like being joyful. And I think we only have one shot at life here. So no matter what, we have to really grab that joy and find out, first of all, what makes us happy.
Mm-hmm.
And second of all, how we can sustain that even in tough times.
Yeah. So some people I think would say that's really hard for me to just decide that I'm going to be happy because I don't feel happy.
Well, a lot of times I'm a big proponent of getting therapy when you're clinically depressed and
Mhm.
medication. I think that's really important because all of us at one time or another, do get depressed and we do get anxious. And especially these days, we have a lot of that going on. But at the end of the day, if you figure that today's going to be my last day on earth, you'd want to be happy and have a good day.
Yeah.
And so for me, what's the point of like moving on if you can't find joy?
Yeah.
And so that's just a very big philosophical way I look at life. And I feel that people like to be happy. They just don't know how.
Yeah.
So I have a whole kind of construct that I put together about how to be happy, because there's ways you can find joy, and it's a real kind of a discipline, but there's ways you can do it even though you're facing some really horrible things.
I want to hear about what you found, and we've got some questions from the audience. So
That's always exciting.
Tim asks, when you were first diagnosed with cancer, how did you find that joy?
Tim, that's such a great question. This is one of the things I start off my keynote speeches with before my breast cancer. This is my other cancer. So I was rushed to the hospital for my first cancer with a blockage, an abdominal blockage, and they didn't know what it was. So they went in, and the doctor didn't think that it was going to be anything. He just didn't think it was going to be cancer. So I'm a medical writer by trade. That's what I was doing before that. So I know a lot about medicine on top of it. So anyway, so they go into my small bowel, because that's where the blockage was. And they found a tumor that was this big. It was huge. And they called it a telescopic tumor because it would go in and out. So it'd block and then it wouldn't block. And so it was
Oh,
very rare tumor. So I woke up from surgery, and the surgeon said to me, "You've got cancer." And I said, "Okay, thanks." It was 5:00 in the morning. No one was there. He just like spit it out. He was so shocked. And he goes, and we don't know what kind of cancer it is. And you've got we won't have pathology back for 2 days. So as a medical writer, I know that when you have cancer in your stomach, it can be deadly. It can be in 3 weeks, you could be out and you can die, or it can be treatable. It depends what it is. So in those 2 days, I thought to myself, well, what's the worst case scenario? I have 3 weeks to live. And then I realized, you know what? I am not going to spend the last 3 weeks of my life miserable. I am going to take every day, even if I'm in a hospital, enjoy it. I'm going to make phone calls. I'm going to do some closure on people that I wanted to speak my mind with. I would tell people that I love them, but I'm going to find joy every day because I'm not going to spend my last 3 weeks as a victim. So the good news is that 2 days later, he comes in and he goes, "You've got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma." And he was totally flipped out about that. But I knew that that's a treatable cancer. So I was on cloud 9 and I ended up, getting immunotherapy and moving forward. He also said that this is the kind of cancer that can come back and will come back. But I cannot live my life worrying about that because that robs you of current joy. So that is how I reacted to my cancer. So when I was diagnosed with breast cancer in March of this year, I took the same approach, and I had a very aggressive form of breast cancer. Luckily, it didn't spread, but it took a lot to treat it. And I said the same thing. You know what? And there's a good chance it's going to come back. But I am not going to spend my life worrying about that. I'm going to live every day, even if I'm not feeling that good, and find something fun to do, and do the things that I like to do. And that is how I'm going to live my life. And it's this conscious decision that I made.
Yeah. Yeah. Got it. Thank you for asking that, Tim.
Good question, Tim.
He was asking, have you always been joyful, like even before you were diagnosed?
Yes. I think I was born joyful. I have to say it. I think that's innate in me. I've always found the silver lining in my life. And I don't know where that came from, but whatever's thrown at me, I figure, okay, where's the good here? I always try to find where's the good here? What's the lesson I can learn?
Yeah.
And how can I move forward from whatever is happening? So
Yeah.
I take a very practical approach to things that go wrong. And
I love that.
I don't get involved emotionally in it. Like I don't blame myself or, I just figure, okay, this is life. We're going to fail. This is life. What can we do to learn from it, move on, and to live a good life? And so I think a lot of that's innate, but it's really, I think everyone can do it with practice. It is a discipline. It is a practice.
It is a practice. It's being in the moment to right now, not worrying about the future, like what's going to happen. Is it going to come back? Whatever. That's the future. You can't control it, but you can control what you're doing right now. Do you want to just sit and veg out on TV, or do you want to go for a nice walk out in the woods? I mean, just different things like that. And then you could worry about the past, but that's past. It's gone.
It's
We're
gone.
here right now. What are you going to do?
And Emily, you are so right about, I think the key word you said was control. We have to really be hyper aware of what we have control over and what we don't.
Yeah.
I have no control over these cancers, but I certainly have control over the way I'm going to react to them.
Yeah.
And that is where I get my strength.
Yeah.
COVID's a great example. I actually got COVID back in December, and everyone, said to me, "Well, how did you get it?" And it's kind of like an STD. I have absolutely no idea how I got it. I think my husband gave it to me, but I have no idea where he got it. Right. So we were both laid up, a year ago. And again, I had no control. I literally had no control. We were quarantined, the whole 9 yards, and we got it anyway, right? But I did have control over. We were really hyper vigilant about how we took care of ourselves, and we didn't end up being hospitalized. That's a perfect example of, we have no control over. We can take precautions, but I still got it.
Right.
So that is same thing with like cancer. It's like you try to live a healthy life. I eat right. I walk 5 miles a day. You still,
Yeah. I
So
think,
control, but knowing what you can control and knowing what you can't. If you can nail that, you're in business because you
yeah,
can worry about what you can control, but you can't worry about what you can't.
no. And, as the New Year's coming up, I'm getting ready to lead this little kind of just a session or two where we're going to, celebrate what we happened in 2021 and our accomplishments and what we're proud of and everything. And then like dream for what we want in the next 3 years and kind of put a plan together. And, cause I don't want to be in the same place I am now next year. I want to grow. I want to, do other things, achieve other things, be other things, just have new experiences. And if we just let life circumstances drive where we go, it's like being on a sailboat and not even adjusting the sail, just wherever the wind takes me, that's where I'll go. And that's not how I want to live life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm a big one on setting goals and dreaming and believing in yourself that you can achieve these things.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, life is so short and it can be taken from you in a heartbeat. And that really kind of drives me because you just don't know. So you really want to accomplish those things. It's interesting. We talked about this earlier, but I'm an achiever too. I like, I'm incredibly busy with my coaching practice and my speaking. And when COVID came, I had to cancel a lot of live events, which really, and then ended up in Zoom and all that. But this year I had to step off my professional. It was intense therapy and I didn't work from April to I'm starting back again in January.
How did that feel?
And I'll tell you, it felt fine. It felt just fine because I knew that because I prioritized. My priority was getting this cancer out of me and recovering. And I'll tell you, with chemotherapy, you really can't do anything else but sit there and not do anything, Same with COVID, by the way. You just kind of sit there. I was watching Hallmark movies last Christmas, which I never did because I'm just sat there.
When you have COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you have.
But I just, you have to say, okay, I'm going to take this break. People will live. My clients were all wonderful about it. And I've already booking up for next year. It's wild how everyone's just been very patiently waiting. So, but I just was able to do that because I knew that I needed to take care of myself. And
they respect you for putting yourself first too. I would just say somebody reached out to me on LinkedIn and we couldn't find a time to meet between now and, a couple of weeks. And I said, I'm taking, this much time off over the holidays. My calendar's blocked. And they respect that,
Yes.
You meet in January.
Yes. People are so afraid of setting those boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's so important for self-care that's the number one thing when self-care is to set boundaries. And don't worry, people will respect that. You have to manage expectations. You have to say this is what's happening. This is my schedule. I look forward. And that's what I said. I said, I think I'll be back to work next January,
Yeah.
But that's really important to be able to, without guilt. I wanted to write a book, which I never wrote, Emily, called Enough Already, Giving Up Guilt at 40. And I'm 63 now. It's like
40, 50, and 60.
But guilt is like the worst. I mean, it doesn't do a thing for us. Mm-hmm. It doesn't do a thing. So, giving up guilt and just doing what you need to do for yourself. And I needed to do it. And it's fine. And I just kind of like, you think of the lost year, but I've learned a lot and I've just, it is what it is, right?
Yeah. So Tim's asking, Tim, I introduced you to Tim through LinkedIn, right? You're going to be on his on cancer. So when he was diagnosed with chronic leukemia 15 years ago, he was in shock and he has a really good support system. And he's wondering about you because, you had your mom had passed away and your brother and your sister.
Yeah. My family, I've got wonderful, my husband and my kids and grandkids. I've got a great support system and I have a great support system. I was a professor for 25 years of public relations and journalism, and I've stayed very close to my students. So I have a great support system in them, a great Facebook family. And I'll tell you something, Tim, there's a wonderful group, a couple of them on Facebook that are breast cancer survivors. And they have some amazing groups that I was able to interact with, which I still do every day, that lend support, give tips. And that was very helpful too, because as you know, no one really knows what you're going through unless you've gone through it. So
Yeah, definitely. So he said his uncle had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And he says, you're giving people hope by sharing your story. Thank you for doing it. I think Tim's you know what, Tim, if you're still here, I went in the comments on the event on LinkedIn and I tagged everybody and said, hope to see you. You know, you're going to be at the show. And now I don't know, they're going to have to watch the replay.
replay's great.
Yeah, replay's
Well,
great.
Tim's holding. Tim is
Yeah, he's helping us
great.
out here. So he used to work in journalism as well.
I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to meeting you.
Yeah. So tell us about, you said that you've developed a system.
Hmm.
Can you tell us
And I
about
call
that?
it the solution shift.
Solution shift.
The solution shift. And it's shifting from being kind of a negative into a positive. So shifting from kind of a negativity into living in a positive moment. So what does that mean? That means that you live in positivity, and whatever is going on, you figure out what it takes to be positive. So there's a couple of tricks to that. So for example, when the first thing, there are a couple things you do, but when you live in positivity, you take everything that you have and you flip the script and you try to find the positive in it. And how do you do that? Two ways. One, as we talked about before, was control. Figure out what you have control over and what you don't have control over, and don't sweat what you don't have control over. And this is also in relationships too, Emily. You know, you're not going to be able to change people.
No.
So
Hard enough to change myself.
yeah, exactly. So figure out what you can control. And I mean, it's like hitting your head against the wall, right? And the second thing is practicing and living in gratitude.
Mhm.
I am grateful for everything that I have, and I don't worry about the things that I don't have or that I am bad. Like for everything that we have, there's something to be grateful for. For example, I'm grateful that both my cancers were discovered in time to be treated. A. Number two, that there's treatments for the cancer. B, that I had health insurance that gave me access to great care. I could go on and on about how grateful I am during this cancer journey. And so when you can find out that gratitude, no matter what's going on, that you still have a roof over your head, or you still have, friends, or you're still breathing, or you're still like, waking, and Tim will know this, waking up every day is a win after you've been through something like that. So that kind of gratitude really lifts you up, and it gets you out of that dark place, that victim place. When I say the solution shift, it moves you from being a victim to becoming empowered. Because it's so easy to be a victim. It's so easy to say, oh, I'm miserable. Everything sucks. Nothing's going right. It's harder to say, you know what? Everything sucks, but I have this and this and this, and this is what I'm going to do for it. So it's a lot of effort to start living in positivity. But once you start figuring it out, it really is a wonderful practice. And it just is uplifting.
I like what you said about practice. Like, what are some of the ways that you can catch yourself when you're in the negative thought and bring yourself back to the positive? Because sometimes we may be in that negative thought for a while before we even realize it, right?
Emily, such a great question. Absolutely. We have to start listening to how we speak to ourselves.
Mhm.
We have to be super present about that saboteur, what we're saying, and the fact that we're negative.
Yeah.
If you find yourself complaining too much, or being a victim, like, oh, nothing's going right, things suck. When you start realizing how you speak and how you think and being really present about it, and this really involves being present, then you can flip the script and say, okay, what can I do about this? So basically, instead of living in the problem, you want to live in the solution.
What
And
about people that,
that's the key. So
I'm sure you've run into people that are always repeating their story. Well, this happened to me, and then that happened, and then that happened. That's like a victim story, right?
right.
If you were a coach, what's your way? I mean, and you are a coach. So what's your way of getting somebody out of that?
Well, I first of all make them quite aware that they're acting like a victim.
Mhm.
And we talk about where you want to be. Like where do you like, because a lot of people, Emily, a lot of people don't I like to be a lot of people like to be victims.
Right.
So the first thing in coaching is that someone who wants to switch to really flip their script.
Right.
Okay. And then I work with them and ask them to write down what they're talking to themselves about. And what is fascinating to me, one of my tricks of the trade, is to have people write down what they say to themselves and then look at it objectively and see if there's truth to it. And if they're living in a world, if they're looking at a lens, this negative lens, and if they just put on a positive lens, things would be different. So it's really about getting into what they're thinking, how they view things, and then giving them an opportunity to figure out another way to look at things. And once you give them that tool, that shift from living, really living in the solution rather than the problem. I always say to people, I'll give you 5 minutes to talk to me about your problems.
Yeah.
5 minutes, that's it. That's all I want to hear. And then the rest of the time, we're going to be talking about solutions. And that's my solution shift. You just, we all have problems. I mean, we could go on for hours and hours. But at the end of the day, what are the solutions? And when you live in that solution, when you live in solutions, like all of a sudden things will pop up and you go, okay, this is the problem, but I have a solution. And when you really commit to that, you'll find that your whole life changes and shifts because you're living in the solution and not living in the problem.
Yeah, one of the areas I coach in is energy coaching, and it's like when you're in that negative story, it's lower energy, right? And when you're in that negative story all the time, you're not going to see any solutions, or you're going to see the same solution that you've tried before and it didn't work. But it's like looking through like a toilet paper roll or a paper towel roll. This is all I see. But how do you remove that? Because there's more than just what you see or can think of for the solutions, but you've got to get out of that negative energy.
Absolutely. So when I'm coaching, we first of all diagnose the problem and diagnose that. And then we work together to find solutions with homework, and things like that, so that my goal is for them to clients eventually learn how to get themselves into that positive space.
Yeah.
And again, but it's a commitment. And I'll tell you, I know that everyone said this 5,000 times, but I've been doing this for 30 years, which is a gratitude journal.
Yeah.
Every night or every
Do
morning,
you journal?
5 things you're grateful for, just, female hygiene products, flush toilets. I mean, whatever, even if you're having a bad day, the sunshine, there's always something to be grateful for. And I think people who had kind of near-death experiences or dealt with cancer, they or heart disease or whatever, they can kind of feel that you kind of get transformed because you really start appreciating all that life holds for us, and really, being appreciative and focusing on that. And then, and you kind of rewiring your brain. And I know there's been research on that, but it literally rewind your brain to be more positive. But again, it starts with wanting to do it, Emily, because a lot of people like to be victims.
Yeah, it does start with wanting to do it.
Yeah.
But why does it take like cancer or, sickness or something like that to get us a lot of us to snap out of it?
I think we're all like robots. We're just every day we wake up, we do the same thing. We don't think about it. We take life for granted is what I think.
Yeah.
And so it takes a shock, like, to take yourself out of that.
I was looking at your website and all the things that you speak about, because you're a public speaker, and the list is just so long. It's like the solution shift, which we just talked about, but balancing your work life, managing your energy, building your leadership brand, leading with confidence, upping your leadership game, thriving through change, which we're kind of talking about, customer service, how to stand out in your industry. It's awesome. All the things that you're able to talk about.
Yeah, I first of all, I love what I do, but as I've gone through as I've gone through my career, I have found that while people are really interested in, self-help, they also are interested in helping their companies. And so I do a lot of company coaching, and how to be better, how to have happier employees, and how to do better customer service, which I think is crucial these days.
Yes.
And but there's ways you can do all of that. Tim just asked if I journal, and I'll tell you, I do not journal because I write so much as a writer and a journalist that and a public relations person, I can't imagine writing anymore. So I don't write, I don't journal.
He finds it tricky, balancing active journaling to get in touch with my feelings and deflecting, going into the forest as a cancer survivor. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's tough. It's tough, but I think that you get this depth of self-discovery, and I think everything just seems so vibrant. I mean, everything I do is just so much. I just enjoy so much of it. And I think that's just from all of, the way that I've lived my life.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I got a little bit of it because right after I retired in 2019, my children's father got sick from cancer and passed away. And so that really changed my life, woke me up, because I could tell he didn't communicate very much. He didn't talk very much, but I could tell that he had a lot of regrets, because he had been verbally abusive and just in the way he had lived his life. And I thought to myself, I don't want to die with regrets. I want to do there's stuff that I want to do. And if I just keep being busy and achieving, that's not what I want either. So I want to be, but I didn't even know how to be. I was telling you that before the show, just to be in the present moment. And pottery has really helped me with that. Have you ever done pottery?
No, but I've done yoga, and yoga helps me with
Yoga,
that
it does
because
too.
you have to stay present or else you fall over. So
Yeah.
so you stay really present, and but pottery too, anything that takes you out of your head, and puts that artistic, physical
Yeah.
thing in it is so important. And then to live that balanced life too. And I
Yeah.
think the next generation is really understanding that balance is so important, that you have to have a lot of joy and fun and also work hard. And I think those two things, and managing your energy, I think I'm like you, I'm a big person on how you manage your energy. So when I coach people on work-life balance, it's more like an energy thing. It's not where you put your time, it's where you put your energy. Because your time it goes, you can't renew it. Time is gone. Like this hour, we'll never have it back. But
Right.
energy is renewable. So if you can figure out where you want to put your energy every day, and then figure out how to renew that energy, you can really manage a full life, a life of kids and work and fun and friends, because you figure out how to manage that energy.
So what's an example?
Well, what I like to say is, and then with no guilt, let's say, for example, that you're working and you've got a big project and you've got a 4 and a 5-year-old and
Mhm.
they need your attention.
Mhm.
Well, they're not going to be able to get their attention for that day. They're going to
Yeah.
have to miss mom, and you're going to have to figure out what to do. So your energy is not going to be with those kids that day. Your energy is going to be with your presentation without guilt. And then once the presentation's over, you can put your energy into the kids. So being able to figure out where you're going to put your energy versus your time is
Mhm.
really uplifting, and it allows you to get everything done without feeling like you're failing everywhere.
Yeah.
So, which is what we do to ourselves. But you can just figure out where. I wake up every morning, I say, where do I need to put my energy today? And then that's what I do. And then, so if the kids need a babysitter, for example, or take care of that. If I have a big workload, I'll take care of that. But waking up every morning and figure out where am I putting the energy, and always save energy for your self-care.
Yeah.
Whether I walk every morning for 5 miles, I was even doing that during my cancer treatment. I mean, it's really important to me to walk. And so where are you putting energy, where are you putting your self-care, all that, but it's all energy based. It's not time based, because time is so hard to manage. because we
You
only
know
have
what?
so many hours in the day.
You know what that just made me think of? Thank you, Tim. It is a good show. I'm enjoying it. It just made me remember. Have you heard of the spoon theory?
No.
Okay, so my daughter has quite a few invisible illnesses. She takes beta blockers, which make you tired, and her illnesses already make her tired. And so, anyway, but you look at her and it's like, you don't look sick. You seem fine. But she has to really be careful about where she spends her energy. And so, there's this story out there. If you just Google the spoon theory, a friend was sitting with a friend and asking her, well, what is it like to live like because you are having to really think through decisions differently, which is the energy than other people. You look fine, but I can't tell. And so she described it as they were at a restaurant. She got let's say 12 spoons. This is how much energy I have in a day. I have 12 spoons. For my daughter, taking a shower is 3 spoons. Then it's like schoolwork, homework. Someone wants to go to Disney World tomorrow or, King's Dominion tomorrow. Can you do that? She has to really think. Or today, how many spoons is that? Now, I could borrow a spoon from tomorrow and, I have 12 today. I could take one and use 13 today, knowing I'm going to be exhausted tomorrow. So that's how she has to live every day. She has to really think through decisions that most people don't have to because of her illnesses.
Yes. Well, and that's a good example of if you take that example and make that universal, that's how we all are really need to look at things.
Yeah, I never really thought of it that way. I just kind of thought of it with Anna, but it is true.
All of us need to do that. All of it. We only have so much energy, Emily. We really do.
You're exactly
where are
right.
you going to put it? And that's a real conscious decision. But especially when you're a younger person balancing all this, it's you can do it, but it takes a lot of energy management, is what I call it,
and boundary setting.
Yes, boundary setting without guilt. Again, those are my favorite things to talk about. It's just you've got to let it go. Guilt gets you nowhere. It does not move you forward. It's the most useless emotion ever.
Yeah. And what about worrying? It's probably one of them.
Worrying is so interesting because, I find myself worrying and then I stop myself from worrying because, again, I try to only worry about what I can control.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really helps me with my worrying. Can I control this? What can I do? But if, I can't worry about what I can't control, like get on a plane, let the pilot worry about it, right? You can't,
One of the things that in this one coaching program that's similar to what you do, the mental fitness coaching program, where that you switch from you create these new neural pathways in your brain, right? When you do this, stopping yourself from thinking those negative thoughts, and it takes practice. And so a couple of things that I would recommend, I wonder what you would say, is to reflect on your day about when I liked your thing about writing down what you're saying to yourself, and then reflect on your day about how you interacted with somebody. And if you didn't do it in the way you really wanted to, from a really loving, hearted perspective, and you got hijacked by your brain and you were like, maybe imagine yourself handling that situation the way you would really want to handle it. And if you practice that in your head, then maybe the next time you're a little better at it, because like you said, it's a practice. Some people might say, well, I just can't do that, but you can if you practice it.
That's right. And it's so easy to just say, I can't do that.
Yeah.
It's just easy to do. It's easy to be a victim. It's easy to say, I can't do that. And at the end of the day, this all takes effort. It takes effort to be joyful. I mean, eventually it becomes, seamless, but it takes effort to start that. Another thing that I encourage my clients to do is keep a strengths journal. And what this is that every day, write down 5 accomplishments that you've done, whatever they are, and figure and link them to what your characteristic and your strength is that allowed you to accomplish that. So let's say you wrote a story. Well, I'm a good writer. let's say you made, cookies for your family. I'm a good cook, that sort of thing that, because a lot of us are so negative. We need to start looking at us as positives. What are we doing right? What are we doing right?
Yeah, I
So
love that.
that strengths journal I find is very, very helpful too. What am I doing right instead of what am I doing wrong?
Yeah,
And again, that's that shift to the positive. That's that living in the solution, living in that
I
positivity.
like that because I said when you reflect, think about how you wish you had handled something, but then also reflect on what you did really well so
Mm-hmm.
that you reinforce that the next time. And my mind tends to go, try not to be a victim here, but I understand why my mind tends to go to that is because when I was in high school, I was a really good basketball player. I was a leading scorer in Maryland, DC, and Virginia, and I could have scored 40 points in a game, and my dad would say, "Good game." Now, you remember that time you went right, you should have gone left, or something like that. So it was constructive criticism. And so I think that's a big reason why plus our reptilian brain does that anyway, but my mind even more so goes to, well, you know what you did right. So let's work on improving in this area and not celebrating the small wins and the big wins. I don't do that. I haven't up until now, uh, done that very well.
That is very interesting. And when you don't get that encouragement when you're young, that is hard. But that's something that again takes practice. And if you were my client, I would make you celebrate your wins. I would say, that would be your theme. Your coaching theme is to celebrate all the good that you bring in the world, all the good that you're doing for others, all the impacts that you're making. And but the fact that you realize that about yourself is such a huge step into shifting into that solution to that, what, it's time to celebrate me.
Yeah.
I don't need to be fixed anymore. I don't need to improve anymore. I've come to the point where I am
Good enough.
good
Good.
and I am helpful. I mean, you get to a point where it's okay, I am good at what I do, and if you don't think I'm good, then you don't have to hire me. I mean, it's like,
It took me this year, and just recently, my coach was my guest, and she made me turn my screen and explain all of my awards because she
Hey,
saw,
you look
she had me stand up and explain every single one of those awards, and two of them are from the Secretary of the Navy.
so
So
there's a lot to be celebrated,
yeah,
and celebrate, period. And no ands, no buts. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite things I always tell people is take but out of your vocabulary. Blah, 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 and not blah, 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 but.
yeah. The words we say, just that, or like someone said the other day, another word is like, or phrase is no problem. But what if you said my pleasure? Different energy, kind of
Different
means the
energy.
same thing, but my pleasure is like, I'm happy to do it.
Another thing we need to stop doing is apologizing. Only apologize when you really need to apologize. I murdered someone. I'm sorry. Okay, that's about it. Other than that, I always call. I must be annoying as heck too, because I always call people on that,
Yeah.
for apologizing. I mean, people I don't even know, like customer service people I'm on the phone with. I said, you don't have to apologize. Don't apologize. And then another thing that I'm just a blah, blah, blah. Don't get rid of the word just. I am a blah. Like I was at an event and I met a woman and she goes, I'm just a student. I said, you're not just a student. I am a student. Take just out of it. So when you start looking at how you talk and being very mindful of what you say, it really helps turn things around. Again, flipping that script with words, with energy, all those sort of things all add up.
When you send an email, it says, I'm just following up on the last email. Why don't you just say, I'm following up on the last. I go in and take out the just now. I mean, I still sometimes put it in there, but I really, have caught myself and do that less. So very interesting. What in all this adversity that you've faced with, just recently, especially the cancer and stuff, but What have you discovered about yourself?
I discovered that I can walk around bald and not care what people think. I was always I just was very careful, like when I did, when you're a presenter, when you're,
Yeah,
everything you want, everything, because to look good, especially when you're on stage, people are very judgy, which is fine, and
there.
I'm not too bad about that, but all of a sudden your hair's gone, which is an interesting thing. So I wore hats for a little while, and I realized, I'm just over this. I just can't. I tried a wig. I hated it. So I'm not used to having so incredibly short hair. It's like wild. I'm looking at it. It's weird. My hairdresser dyed it because she just wants the gray. But whatever. And for a long time I didn't have any eyebrows or eyelashes. But I just realized, I don't care. I really don't care what it I don't care that I can go out like that and not worry about it, and it was fine.
I
But
love that.
but that was a big step for me just to be able to go out to the market and be bald, and then, people react, and so anyways, but, it's interesting, my brother who has cerebral palsy, he was physically crippled, and people would stare at him, and I learned so many, and he never gave it a second thought, he just didn't care. That was his life, and I just, there's something about that self-confidence. It's just like, I am who I am, this is me, and, you know, I can't control how you feel about that, but I can control that. So that's what I think one of the biggest things I learned, that and the fact that I was able to get through chemo and make it, because that's really hard. It was
Yeah.
really hard, and I was able to get through that. So
Let me ask you a question. See if you can answer this. See if you can figure me out.
okay.
Okay. I don't remember how old I was, but I was in my 40s, probably just before I turned 50. There was this little kid that had cancer. So I got my head shaved in support of him. And the next day I had to go speak in front of 200 people. And I knew people were thinking like, is Emily sick or whatever? But I mean, I used the #1 blade. It was as short as your hair. And it felt really, actually, I left it that way for 3 years. I loved it. It was kind of hard to grow out and I just liked it short. So I was confident enough to do that. Right. But I put up with a verbally abusive spouse for 7 years. Why?
I think that you felt that you didn't deserve anything better than that.
You're right.
That's
You're
exactly
right.
you didn't, that's what you deserved. And
Well, yeah.
you weren't good enough to have somebody who really respected you and loved you. Even though and that's what I'm talking about. That is the lies that we tell ourselves, and we get into these situations. Because at the end of the day, you are definitely worthy of love. You're
Yeah.
definitely worthy of a decent man and a decent relationship. But we don't allow ourselves to do that. So the way we look at ourselves, we really need to step away from that and look and say, we're not being accurate. No one deserves that.
Yes, no one deserves it. And
Especially you.
I actually said it on a show last night. I said that I had been married before him and I wasn't faithful. And I felt really bad about that. And I've never been unfaithful since then. But I felt that I deserved that verbal
See,
abuse.
so that really,
That explains it.
that is very concrete.
And I had kids with him. So it took my kids being impacted for me to get the courage to leave. But
Yep.
we had a whole show on that. But it's just so interesting that I could be really confident at work, and I could, do that with my hair and not care what people think. And at home, I was such a different person. It's so
Yeah, isn't that interesting? I think a lot of us live that way. A lot of us live that way. Or the opposite. They're not confident at work, but they're great, great at home,
Yeah.
So, and they have very strong marriage, but they're just a wreck at work, So
Yeah.
it's interesting. But it's really important if we want to live joyful lives and we have to surround ourselves with people who love us and respect us. And that respect and love starts with us.
Mhm. Yeah.
Without a doubt, that self-love is so important. And I was lucky enough that I've always kind of had that.
Mhm.
And so I was bullied horribly as a child. And that's a whole nother topic. But my father was very, unlike your dad, was kind of, was kind of critical. My dad was just always supportive and saying, you're good and don't listen to them and blah, blah, blah. And so I became empathetic that I learned that when you show up, you can't control how people are going to react to you. You just have to be you.
Mhm.
And some people are going to like you and some people aren't going to like you. But the most important thing you can do is be you
Mhm.
and love you. And when you
Right.
love yourself and you are yourself, then everything else falls into its place. But it really starts with you. Because if you don't, and I know it sounds trite, we hear it all the time, but if you don't love you, then it's hard for anyone else to penetrate that and to get there.
I
Inspirational.
agree. Something happened recently where about 3 years ago, I had dated this guy, and then he wasn't really very nice to me. And all of a sudden, I get this email yesterday. Oh, hi, Emily. It's, in his name. And, I hope you're still not mad at me, are you? And, and I just responded, hi, happy Thanksgiving. And then he said, he said something, hope you don't mind me reaching out. And I just said, why are you reaching out? But and then I never heard from him again because he didn't have anything to say. But the old Emily would have been like, oh, he reached out to me again. He likes me. And I would have probably gone and seen him. No, this time I was like, yeah, why are you reaching out? It didn't even faze me. It felt so good that
That is such progress. And that
yeah.
really is a real concrete example of how you've grown.
Yes. Yeah. Really
That's gotta
showed
be
me.
so uplifting.
It,
That's absolutely wonderful.
yeah. Because you've probably worked with people like me before that would have been like, oh, maybe he likes me again. And and he was probably thinking that I was like that still, and I would react that way.
Exactly, and he has no idea how you've grown,
Yeah. So
and I think the thing that's exciting for me is that we do grow, and if we
yeah.
allow ourselves to grow, we can grow and evolve into these people who can find joy and who can handle challenges and who won't put up with BS. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Who won't put up with it anymore. Like I have zero tolerance for BS. Zero. I don't do well. I just, I need people who are straight, who are loving, straight with me, who are loving and kind and if you're not, then I don't really need you in my life. My life's too precious and life's too short. And
Yes.
so it's very easy for me just to say I only surround myself with people who are nurturing and who really who really add to my life. I've gotten rid of all the people in my life who are just, suck the life out of me. I did that years ago.
Yeah.
People here are, they're just really, and that's really important.
Yeah.
Just, surround yourself.
Yes. Well, I really appreciate you being on my show. And
So fun, Emily.
Tim, thank you for being our sole guest.
The Onward Podcast is sponsored by Emily Harmon Coaching and Consulting. Visit my website, emilyharmon.com, to learn more about my coaching programs and how you can work with me. Let's move onward together.